Welcome back to the Be Better Off show. Now we're sharing some archive footage. I'm stuck in the middle of my housebound due to the China virus, and I'm sharing Louise Cordina. Louise is the daughter of the founder of the Cordina Chicken Empire, and here she shares with us at a Plan to Win event her amazing story. It's not easy to be somebody coming through in a family business, living in the shadow and trying to do their own piece of building the family legacy. I love this interview because Louise is so honest and transparent about the challenge of that, but also her journey and how she's managed that. As many of our clients find themselves in situations in family businesses where they're stepping up behind somebody who's done amazing things, and I think Louise gives a great insight and shares enormous wisdom in this interview. So enjoy. I'd love to hear your feedback.
You're listening to the Be Better Off show by Kelly Partners.
I just wanted to start by saying that both Scott and Louise are two of the most interesting and enthusiastic business owners I've ever met in the private sphere, and I'm looking forward to hearing their commentary today. Why don't we start perhaps with you, Louise, and just share the history of your business?
Sure. So we're a fourth generation family business. My great-grandfather started the company in the 1930s. Very typical immigrant story. He came to Australia to try and find a better life for his family. Came originally to start a market garden here, left his family back in their original home country of Malta. And then when he'd saved up enough money and built a small tin shack, brought his family over from war-torn Europe. And my grandfather, who was a young teenager at the time, had used the opportunity to find that there was a gap in the market for providing people with a fresh chicken product, because at that time, if you wanted a chicken, you were buying it at the market with the feathers on it. Yeah. So it was probably the first innovation of our business, and at that time the chicken industry didn't actually exist. There was no
chicken processing.
No, exactly. So the business really grew from there, and from him growing a dozen chickens in the backyard for a bit of pocket money, that then grew into a business that they set up a processing facility. And then the grew from that time. My father entered the business in the 1970s, and then myself in the 90s. So today we're the third largest poultry processing company in Australia, still the oldest obviously, and we differentiate ourselves in the market by being a specialist in innovation and really focusing on being more agile than our two larger competitors.
Larger competitors. So what year was it that the business was started?
It was started in the early 30s in an informal chickens in the backyard type of fashion, and then became an incorporated business in 1945.
Okay, it's a great story. Fantastic. How many chickens did you process last year? Do you know?
Well,
roughly.
We process approximately 650,000 chickens per week.
Fantastic. So it's a great context. 650,000 chickens a week. Mrs. Roach with 250,000 independent contractors. Everything that we're doing is starting to look very easy. Scotty, we don't have any feathers on what we do. Tell me about your business.
Okay, before I do start, Brett, I'm just going to make one correction. My official title is actually a non-executive director and shareholder, majority shareholder with my wife Linda, who's here today. It's important I say that because my CEO Angela Black's in the room, and I didn't want her to think that she's lost her job at this event. So
where is
if I can just make that one clear. So Game Farm was founded in 1975. It was founded by my in-laws, Arminio and Olivia Bento. So some people would call me the outlaw. But so they both originated from Portugal. They met here in Australia. My father-in-law basically arrived with a shirt on his back and an empty suitcase. He set out to the Snowy Mountains scheme and spent 11 months working there. He was a cabinet maker by trade. When he left the Snowy scheme, he came back, he started making furniture, supplying a lot of restaurants, and but his passion was hunting. Fast forward many years, and he had a big fire in his factory on New Year's Eve and lost everything, and spent the next 12 months rebuilding it. He then went to his passion of hunting, and in his backyard, aviary of his Bondi Junction home, he had quails, pheasants, guinea fowls, etc., and mainly for their own consumption, but that soon grew to family and family of friends and friends of friends, etc., etc. And then the business started basically from there. The kitchen was the abattoir, the Volvo was the delivery vehicle, and pretty much that's where it started. So what started with a couple of birds for family, last year we average about 50 to 55,000 quail a week, 15 to 20,000 spatchcock a week on top of that as well. But yeah, all began from the backyard aviary in Bondi Junction.
Amazing. So,
A
Scotty,
lot of hard work, blood, sweat and tears.
has gone into it. Now, just to give people who aren't avid game meat connoisseurs, what are the products that you produce? So quail?
Yeah, so quail is our number one product, and we're fully vertically integrated there. So we have the breeding stock all the way through to the finished processed product, the export abattoirs, etc. Quail represents about 38% of our total business. Spatchcock, which is a young chicken, is our next biggest product, followed by very closely corn-fed chicken, duck, etc., etc. But basically, if it moves, we sell it. If it doesn't move, we move it. Emu, ostrich, kangaroo, rabbits, hares, pheasants, guinea fowl, partridge, crocodile, camel.
Fantastic.
The works.
Fantastic. Excellent. So I love to ask people, what is your sort of motto or a quote or a thought that really summarises your approach to life and business?
So for me, it's all about being different. In everything that we do in business and probably very much in my own personal approach to life as well, any opportunity to differentiate is what drives our business. So in business, if you don't have a need for being, then there's no future in what you're doing. If you have a unique point of difference, then you have a need for being. If you have as many unique points of difference as possible, then you have a good business. Yeah. So everything that we do, every way that we interact with our customers, the type of products that we produce, where we place ourselves in the market, it's always around looking for that opportunity to find a unique point of difference.
Yeah. Excellent. Scotty?
Mine's very simple, Brett. It's no regrets.
Yeah.
I never want to die wondering, and I did a deal with myself at a very early age that if it makes sense, I'm going to give it a go. So very entrepreneurial in my thinking. I believe in structure and process, but I believe what the imagination can dream, you can actually achieve, and I've always lived by it.
Yeah, excellent. So in terms of ideas, attributes, you mentioned, Louise, this idea of innovation, finding a point of difference. Yeah. You know, many businesses that we interact with, including our own, worry about being in highly contested, potentially undifferentiated, growingly commoditised markets. How do you, when you're selling so much of such a core product, a sort of practical example with your new factory or whatnot, gives an example of how you've really differentiated?
Our approach to differentiation is to understand who our customer is, what their problems are, and give them solutions. Yeah. So it sounds really, really simple, but if you think about it, the most simple definition of business really is coming up with a solution for a need. So if we are looking for opportunities in every way, whether that be on a personal level with the people we're dealing with, or whether it be from a business sense, everybody that we interact with has a problem. Yeah. It might be that they've got an aggressive competitor and they urgently need a product that they can launch to combat, or it might be that somebody's time poor and doesn't have time to do their job properly and needs to get a promotion. So in every way that we interact with our customers, we look for those opportunities. We look for a problem. Yeah. And wherever we can see a problem, then that gives us the opportunity to come to that person and present them with a solution. So that would be a big ideal that we work with in everything that we do, and not just from a commercial sense, but in our product development, our production, our technical. We're always looking for what is that problem that someone's got that we can solve. Yeah. We also look for opportunities to make a weakness a strength. Yeah. So if we, in every market, you're going to have smaller players, larger players. Whatever that thing is that you potentially see as your challenge, you find that way to turn that into your point of difference. So in our case, we're in a very mature, competitive market where we've got some very, very big national players. So in a way, we could say, well, we're the small guy, so poor us. You know, that's really hard. How can we compete with people who have such a huge economy of scale compared to a smaller business? Instead, we see that as, how do we make the fact that we're smaller actually an advantage? So what can we do better than the big guy? We can be more agile, we can be better at relationships, we can be better at innovation. So we'll look for those type of opportunities to differentiate.
Great. Scotty?
I guess being in a very boutique specialised area that we are, our main attributes are other specialised boutique producers out there. As I said, quail is a product that we're fully integrated in, and we've got most of our capital investment tied up. But being able to meet other farmers that are really good at producing quality products, but they're not good marketers, whereas we've got a very strong marketing side of our business and a very strong, trusted, relied upon brand that we can take new products to market. So we can offer the customer, you know, somewhat of a one-stop shop in a specialty boutique space. Not to mention that whenever we've invested in capital equipment, we've always looked well into the future. So we have a processing plant that only operates 3 days a week. It only operates 6 hours a day, so we've got plenty of scope for growth from a production point of view. Our products are all about awareness and education. Think that we've been around since 1975, 41 years, and there's probably 80% of the Australian population that still haven't tried quail. It's quite amazing, which shows the opportunities that we have. But it's our biggest challenge has been getting the distribution channels and getting the Coles and the Woolworths that can allow those distribution channels to be able to get to the masses, to take our type of business seriously, and that's something that we certainly are focusing on.
So in terms of significant events or persons, decisions in the life of the business, Louise, what do you see as the things that have really moved you forward or challenged you?
In our case, it's actually those adversities that I feel have been the most formative for our business. So in a business like ours, which is an old business, a multi-generation business, you have to be able to evolve and see what the next opportunity is. And one of my real beliefs is to be able to find an opportunity in every adversity. So the times in the business, and when you have a business that's 70 years old, you're going to get thrown a few curveballs. So at the times when those curveballs are thrown at you, you have got to be able to, not wallow in self-pity or have your head in your hands, but say, okay, what's the angle here? Find an angle, get a plan, and execute. And some of those times when you are thrown the challenges, actually, if you look at it that way, can be really, the biggest opportunities that are presented to you, because they really give you an opportunity to look at direction, maybe have communications that you wouldn't have had if everything was going sort of swimmingly. So when I think about where we've made adjustments to the course of the business that have gotten us to where we are, it's been usually through finding what's the opportunity in something that's been thrown our way, that wasn't expected.
You, Scotty?
There's been a couple that I can think of, Brett, but the most significant would have been when the second generation, being myself, Linda, and her brother Mark, took financial ownership of the business, and we purchased the business from the founding generation 11 years after I started. That was back in 2004 when that transaction happened. I can swear on the hand on heart that for those first 11 years, I gave it my absolute everything. But when you take financial responsibility for a business and the business is yours, you just seem to be able to grow arms and legs. So this is a message out there for first generations that haven't let go and don't want to give their second generation that full control. It's just, it's the element of risk that you're willing to take when it's your own money rather than somebody else's money. I think that was a significant time in our business, where our business for the next 5 or 6 years just grew at double-digit growth year on year, and profitability went through the roof. We bought out 2 of our competitors. It was a really exciting, interesting, and challenging time. And whilst the first generation, being Minio and Olivia, had built these great foundations, we were able to take those foundations and grow it and take it to a whole new level. The other significant event was when we got our export licence. We're the only game bird plant in Australia that has an export licence, and that opened up markets into Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong and the Middle East. that then, it gave me the opportunity to network and meet with a whole different group of people that allowed me to open my mind and take my personal development to a whole new level, which then led to an opportunity to invest in a startup business in Dubai 11 years ago, where we import products from all around the world, mainly high-end proteins, and distribute to the 5-6-star hotels, the airlines, the supermarkets, etc., etc., etc. And we're an equal partner in that business. So it's just amazing, how certain significant events can change the path of business.
Of a business. So what you've mentioned there, Scotty, is about the nature of both of these businesses being family businesses and very long-standing. What are the challenges around working in a family business that are unique in terms of interpersonal relationships and just those general dynamics? And can you speak a little bit about, how do you respectfully work with the older generation and intelligently inspire, encourage, and certainly train up the next generation?
Another interesting question. When I started Game Farm, I was 24 years of age. I had no fear and I had a lot to learn, but I had a job to do as well. And when I first walked in there was my mother and father-in-law, there was their son, there was my wife Linda, there was aunties, uncles, nephews, nieces, you name it. And as you can imagine, in a family business like that, not all family were towing the way they should have, and they weren't pulling their weight.
Tranquility.
And so there had to be a lot of hard decisions made, and let's just say that I wasn't the most popular for the first couple of years, and that was the only time that we ever had a problem, Brett. And the only other time that I can think of outside of that is my inability when I would come home to be able to stop talking work, or Linda would be awake at midnight, so would I, and I'd roll over to her and say, "Did you pay that creditor today, or did you do this or you do that?" So that inability to turn off. But today we have our daughter Ashley in the business while she's at uni, just getting experience, as we did with our son Daniel. My brother Craig is in charge of inventory control, and we have our nephew Taylor, and our son Daniel worked in the business while he was at university as well. I've always seen it as a really good thing. I never, want to encourage our children to be, to be part of the future of Game Farm. I want them to live their own dreams and to go out there and aspire to build their own careers, But being able to see your family members contribute to a business and in a positive way, and who better to trust and to rely on than people that have that heart and soul and passion in the business.
Invested in the thing. Louise, so over nearly 85 years, since an informal beginning, there's been a few generations. I've seen the photos, but you've still got your dad around.
Yep.
And your grandfather.
My grandfather was part of the business until he passed away just last December.
Yeah.
But until, in fact, his very last thought was of the business, and I know that because he was trying to phone me, and he would ring me every day with a new idea. He was 93 when he passed away, so he was still very passionate about the business until the day he passed away, and he really credited it to his length of life because he maintained that passion and excitement for the business. Yeah. I think there's no doubt that the family dynamic is one of the more difficult structures, and there's plenty of horror stories around businesses imploding when they get to generation 3 particularly. I think for family business structure to work, there's a couple of key points that make it more workable. You've got to forget about being the world's greatest democracy. At the end of the day, like any business, there's got to be one clear direction and one person calling the shots. I think a lot of the confusion in family business structure becomes because there's family. It gets a little bit blurred around, it's nice for all the family to have some input, and also that the priorities of the business start to sometimes take backseat to the priorities of family members. So I think for a genuine good succession in family business, you've really got to be clear about the fact that the business is its own entity. The decisions that are made have to be the right decisions for the business. Yep. And that's always number one, and be unapologetic about that. And at the end of the day, if the right decisions are made for the business, then ultimately that flows onto the family anyway. Yeah. And it's very important in any business to have the right people in the right jobs, and oftentimes those people are not going to be the family members. Yeah.
So how do you have that conversation? Because that, in any business, particularly in a growth business, I don't know if anyone knows the Atlassian business, which is a great story, but I interviewed Mike Cannon-Brooks, who founded that business with Scott, and that's now an $8 billion listed business. And he said to me the hardest thing about it was while they were employing 500 new people a year, they were also exiting people into their alumni program who had been outgrown by a business that has gone from zip to 8 billion. When that's not family, that's hard enough. When it is family, how do you have that delicate conversation?
I think that there's got to be a clear understanding when people want to come into the business in the family. In the time that I've been in the business, I have what I call the reality check conversation, which is to say, by all means, come into the business, but this is what you're signing up for. And one of those things is the business is not here to serve you, you're here to deliver for the business. So ultimately, if you're a family member in a business, you're actually making sacrifices as opposed to the other way around. So if that's clear from the outset, that if you want to enter into the family business, you realise that you're actually going to have to, if you're part of the family, you've got to work that bit harder than everybody else. You making rolling over to your wife at midnight saying, did you remember to pay the bill? So when you're coming into the family business, you need to understand that the business has got its own path. I never entered into the business with the sort of naive thought that I will still be doing it when I'm 70, 80 or 90. If I am, great. But ultimately, whatever the decisions of the business that need to be made between now and there, they will be about what's right for the business. And that at times may actually conflict with what I might like. So I think that needs to be very clear to the family members, and that there's a clear, fair and transparent framework.
Just like in any, I guess, relationship, particularly employment relationship. Scotty, with you?
I actually had to have that hard conversation with myself, Brett, because after 22 years of running the business, the last 4 years of that, it was pretty much leaderless or rudderless because I was running around doing all the other things that I enjoy doing. I sat myself down and said that it's not heading in the right direction. We're not achieving the growth. We're not getting the success that we know the business is capable of. It's about time that I actually step aside and hand over to somebody that can take the business to a whole new level. And we had 75 employees and families that we're responsible for, and it's important to see their development and growth. And I mentioned Angela earlier before. Angela's been with us for 10 months. We worked very closely together for the first 6 months during that transitional period. And the framework that a non-family member, non-emotionally attached and professional has been able to bring to our business. And
so an objective view. And
a really good objective view. And we've had some pretty interesting conversations, and some might find them confronting, but I saw them as great opportunities. And I'm really excited about the way forward, and it's certainly given Linda and I a much improved quality of life, and it allows us to fulfil other dreams and aspirations.
So in my presentation I mentioned how fraught an issue and how huge an issue succession is. And Scott's a good friend of mine, and having observed that process, it's extremely rare these days that people are objective enough about themselves and their business to say, you know what, there might be someone better to do this role than me. I've lost my passion, enthusiasm, or the business has grown beyond that person. What's your advice to people that are sitting there that, often, that's a difficult conversation to have with someone else, let alone yourself. What's your advice to that person in that situation?
I think it's as simple as be true to yourself. And, Brett hit the nail on the head. And as sad as I am to say it, I had lost my mojo for the business. It was a business that was founded by my in-laws. I was given a great opportunity where the great foundations had been built, and I was able to, take it from there and grow it. But I never felt like it was really my own. And even though we did buy it, I had other ambitions of being able to go out there and start a business from scratch and build it and really see if I was capable of doing that. So, just be true to yourself. Don't give up. Don't wave the white flag too early. Give it your absolute best. And if you give it your absolute best and you don't believe the business is realising its true potential, it's certainly time to not only look out but look within. I would have loved to have been able to hand the baton over to somebody within our business especially with the length of time that I'd been there with the business and had worked with so many people. But the right person to take our business to where it needed to go didn't exist, so I had to look outside. And I'd known Angela for in excess of 10 years. She'd been with the one company for 20 years and had seen that business grow from a $20 million business to a $500 million business, and worked very closely with the founder and the CEO. So that was what was excited me, and I knew the owner of that business, and we spoke quite openly about it, and and he was bringing in himself a CEO to replace himself, and it really helped. And I guess going back to one of the earlier questions, Brett, one of the best things that I've ever done in my professional and personal career was to join a business group. So I meet once a month with a group of CEOs and owners of family businesses, and we've done this for 15 years. It's professionally facilitated, and you really get to know yourself, similar to what Wayne Pearce said earlier on this morning, in relation to you're challenged, you work closely with people that you bond together. They get to know who you really are and what you're really about, and it's not always about proving yourself or doing it through obligation or whatever it may be. You're a long time doing whatever you do, and you've got to love and love what you do and be passionate about it. So it was time, and
Very
no
good.
looking back.
Louise, customer focus. So I guess I'd love you to relate the story of, some of us have customers, which is excellent, and but you guys deal with people like Coles and Woolworths who are kind of huge and sophisticated, aggressive, and determined to do what they need to do to get by. How do you build relationship at multi-levels across a very large organisation that you're engaged with?
Similar to what I touched on before, I think probably the most important thing that I have learnt in that space, being a business that's come from being all about relationships. And my grandfather, when it was our 65th birthday a few years back, we asked him, what's the most important factor in business? And he said, loyalty to your customers. And being a business that's founded on these traditions, I think the most important thing in that regard is the revelation that loyalty doesn't exist in business. So the traditional translation of what loyalty is about has no place in the business world. Our customers don't owe us anything, and loyalty intrinsically ends up equaling complacency. We've had a relationship with Coles for 50 years, and we do have someone from Coles here in the room, so he'll probably be interested in the story. But we really value that relationship that we've had with them. But if we expect them to be there just because of loyalty,
it's not enough.
Then really we're sort of missing the point, because loyalty works if you've got a close relationship with someone and they think you're a great guy and you're awesome and you're doing lots of great work. But then that guy could get moved to a different department tomorrow, or he could end up outside of the business. So loyalty in business, from my perspective, is being absolutely irreplaceable to your customer's business. So if we are making sure that we're indispensable to our customer, that's loyalty. So when they sit down to make those hard decisions at times, and they look at, well, here's my 5 chicken suppliers, well, we've got to keep those guys because
they do something that really matters.
That's right. So, so when it comes to whether it be our smaller partners or our larger partners, it all comes down to that same thinking around who is my customer really, what are their problems, and how do I make their life easier? And we adopt that approach with the likes of the retailers, and the same as and their problems will be different. In smaller customers, it might be that they've had rapid growth, they've got a great concept, they mightn't have the operational understanding to take that product to the next level. It might be that they need product innovation, but they haven't yet got a team of their own. So any of those opportunities where we can come along and say, hey, don't worry, you guys haven't got an innovation department yet. I've got an awesome innovation team. We understand who your customers are. We'll come and bring you some stuff to have a look at. Or whether it be that it's at a retailer where those guys have got way too much to do and they've just got to hit their targets. And we can come along and say, well, you know what, look, you've got too much to do. we're really good at that. We'll take care of that for you, and then you guys can concentrate on something else.
Yep, fantastic. Scotty, you're sort of working over in Dubai as well, which you mentioned, and dealing with a completely different customer base. How does your approach adapt? Is it very similar?
I mean, really the principles are exactly the same. It's all about finding a common ground. It's all about building a relationship. It's finding out where their challenges are, and as Louise has so correctly stated, it's just about solving their problems and making, I guess, them look good in front of their businesses and their direct reports. But what I would like to add here, Brett, is probably more so a lesson that I've learned, and what I take home from a lot of these types of events is learning from the hindsight of others and the rest of it. And about 6 years ago, we were very strong with Woolworths. It was about 12% of our total business. And we had a great relationship with the business manager. He'd been the same business manager for the best part of 15 years. And we thought we were just on a path to success. And our mission is to have 5% of the Australian population enjoying quail once a month. And our way to do that was to be able to have these retailers support us. And we felt so comfortable about it. Well, then came the big change, and Woolworths got rid of a lot of their 30-plus year veterans and brought in a lot of people from Europe to some of these senior positions. And the biggest lesson that I learnt was that you've got to have a relationship matrix in your business, especially with important clients, because we had a great relationship with this very senior business manager for meat and poultry, and everybody below them, even all the DCs. We had great relationships, but we never took the time or the initiative to develop relationships as Louise has established with the R&D teams, the chefs, the people that are actually making the decisions that then take it to the business units and say, based on the tens of millions of dollars that we've done surveying the Australian consumers, these are the trends, these are the directions that we need to go, and this is what you need to go out there and source and supply and do. So anybody that's got a client out there that's a very important part of their business and they can't afford to lose them, just ensure that you have got a relationship matrix and you really map out who are the important key decision makers in that business and who actually influences the change in the future direction. And look at the worst case scenario. Who are our relationships with? If they lost, is our business at risk? How can we minimise that? And that's certainly a take home that we had. But on the flip side of that, it's something that Louise has done incredibly well and has great relationships all the way through.
Very, very, very interesting. So I want to open up to the floor and any questions. I met Scott, and then through Scott, Louise, and I've learned an enormous amount from the pair of them, so I can only recommend that if anyone's sitting there with a question, you pop your hand up and I'll try and see you. I am relatively blind. Hi Kim, I can see you. Is there a question out there? Yep, right up the back there.
Hi, I'd be interested to know...
What's your name?
My name's Tom.
Oh, hi Tom.
Hi Brett, how are you?
Good mate.
I'd be interested to know how the internet has impacted your ability to transact direct with consumers now, as opposed to having to go through distributors that clip the ticket on the way through. Is that something you're both now doing more of, or are you still going through third-party distributors?
This might be more relevant to you than us. From our perspective, there's not been a huge change in that a lot of our relationships are not directly with the end user. So a lot of our business is about making other people look good. So we try to be the guys behind the scenes doing a lot of work and arming other brands with the products that they need to have a unique point of difference in their market. So we don't really have a presence where we're talking directly to consumers, except potentially through a retail brand, which then also is still going through a retailer. So in our case, our industry is probably a little, sort of behind the times when it has come to our need to really adopt a lot of new digital social media presence, I would say in our case.
Yeah, I mean, most people in Australia know chicken, but when it comes to quail and spatchcock and the specialty products that we produce, obviously social media is key. And on the back of that, we've had a great uplift through MasterChef and My Kitchen Rules. and the social media activity that happens during competition when people are cooking quail or spatchcock, or they're shopping in Coles and buying their spatchcock or whatever it may be, is certainly very important for us to continue to build that awareness and educate the consumer about the different types of proteins that are available. And one thing that I'm really passionate about our products is that, you know, we all like to entertain. It's a typical Australian way, whether it's a barbecue, whether it's a dinner party, whatever it may be. I see our products as a way of expressing to your friends or your closest friends and your family that you really care about them, because you've actually gone out on a limb and you've cooked something that's really special. And it's amazing that whenever we do entertain, how many people love the products that we produce, but they're just a little bit intimidated as to you know, how to prepare them, how to cook them. So social media is a really important way of us to communicate out there, whether it's you know, recipes on or even cooking instructions on YouTube or whatever it may be. But as far as our distribution channels, we only use you know, the technology these days to educate and build awareness rather than you know, distribute products through.
Yeah, very good. There's a question right there, gentleman in the blue shirt.
Mark Austin from Strategic Transactions.
Is it Mark?
Mark Austin.
Hi, Mark.
Yes.
How are you?
Both of you are fantastic acquisition opportunities for large Australian or multinational food producers. Are you for sale?
Don't answer that question, Linda.
At 100 times earnings, we can start talking.
Well, I can answer that question in two ways. As a CEO, I would be very irresponsible to say what are you offering. No, we get approached regularly by various you know, private equity firms, and particularly there's been a bit of activity in our industry of late with Ingham's has recently changed hands and back on the market again. So it is something that we deal with regularly. We're lucky in our business that we have had really good succession, and that we have a plan and a path. I think, to be honest, the more important question is always around the business having the business maximising its value regardless of what the ownership is. So, as somebody responsible for the path of the business, it would be naive to sit in this seat and sort of say, oh, you know, we're never for sale, and that's, you know, it's always going to be about the family. In my mind, it's always about what's best for the business. So the decisions that are made are the best decisions for the business around knowing who we are, where we are in our market, and having a very clear path to own that position. With the intention always of that we love what we do, we're very passionate about what we do, and we see ourselves in the industry for a very long time. But if I do my job right, then the business value is maximised regardless of who owns it in the future. So if a time came that we did make that decision, then that's a great outcome for the family, because the value of the business has been maximised. On the other hand, if we're lucky enough to be able to continue navigating successfully, that we can stay and run the business, then of course that's our ideal. But whatever would be the right decision for the business, as I touched on before, even in my role, would always have to prevail.
It's a really interesting question, because not that long ago, businesses like ours that were considered primary production were on the nose, and you were lucky to get 2 to 3 times EBITDA multiples. You know, there's businesses in our industries now, both in Australia and internationally, that are talking double-digit EBITDA multiples. So it's certainly a worthy question. Similar to Louise, to me, you've always got to have an open mind. You've always got to have a look at what's best for your business. But it would have to be the right buyer. It'd have to be a buyer that could respect the family traditions and be able to continue on and you know, take the business to its true potential, and look after the people that have helped us as a family to be able to grow the business to where it is.
Good answer. Right up the back there, there's a gentleman, I think it's Johnny. How are you, sir? I can see that far, it's amazing.
Thank you. I've actually got a question for both of you. And you touched on shows like MasterChef. In the last 5 to 7 years, we've had quite a big food revolution. Has that awareness made you think about your business in a different way?
Yeah, no doubt, it's had a huge impact. The popularity now, Celebrity Chef, these shows like MasterChef, which are so popular, have done really good things for the food industry in that it's educated consumers. Scott mentioned the word before about people being intimidated by food. So what the biggest impact that those type of shows have had is it's really expedited a path for innovation in that people see things on these shows. They might hear a term that they haven't necessarily heard before or hear a flavour, and then they're not so intimidated by that term. They'll potentially, when they see that in the supermarket, they'll think, oh, okay, that's what I saw on MasterChef, I'll give that a try. For people like us who are innovators, that's a great thing because if consumers are becoming more adventurous, they're starting to be a little bit more savvy about where their food comes from, what they eat, wanting to try new things, then people like us who love to innovate and be able to arm our customers with new products, particularly because of our size, we're better at responding quickly to those type of changing trends. So the fact that these type of shows are expediting trends is a great thing for us because that really helps us play to our strengths.
It's been great for building awareness for our types of products, but as I alluded to earlier, our biggest challenge has been getting the major retailers to take us seriously and give us the distribution channels to give the consumer access to our products. And frustratingly, most of the time they have to replace a quail or a spatchcock that they've seen on the show with an alternative protein because they just can't get access to it. But in saying that, not only has Angela brought the expertise and the experience of the business, but also qualified staff that have these relationships and a specialist retailers that can go in there and develop and have the success that Louise has been able to have through the relationships and the innovation that you've been able to bring to the retail level as well. So it's interesting and exciting times ahead.
Very good. Very good. Well, I want to thank Louise and Scott on behalf of Kelly Partners for coming today and giving up their time. I'd hope to think that today has been delivering some value and that people will walk away with some notes either on their phone or in their pad that they can take away and help. I specifically want to call out both of these guys as really inspiring myself and other people within our business that they've interacted with, and just thank them on behalf of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Be Better Off Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Have a great day.